Hello, and welcome to the story so far. My name is Zari, the DM for our Wanderer's Path campaign on Destined to Roll. This is going to be a bit of a story about what happened prior to our recorded episodes, as well as a wrap-up for the first half of our campaign, episodes 1 through 27. This story was written by Shorty and myself, and it tells the tale of our beloved group, the Lil Scalawags N Co, as they explore the world of Moira. Now for the beginning. We zoom into Ven Hazy, a small, swampy port city in the Artis region, on the tip of the Claris Kingdom, to a small tavern named the Misty Waters Inn. The town alters between being full of merchants, bringing goods from the other continents, to being sleepy when the merchants pass. A small red kobold, swimming in his full armor and bearing a shield, enters the tavern, accompanied by a young water genasi, Avalan, her dark teal hair shifting lightly, as though floating in water, and a half-elf, Elman, with a relaxed expression and a small, self-righteous smirk on his face. The two had just rescued the small kobold from an altercation on the docks, one of the jerk sailors thinking he was about to steal goods. The kobold runs in with a mighty, "I am Snud, the mightiest dragonborn paladin in all the land! Point me on an adventure!" He draws not much more than a passing glance from most of the other patrons at the bar. However, a changeling, Cass, in the form of a large Aesmer man, notices this dragonborn, as it were, and takes a small liking to the whimsical nature of the creature. He offers him a place at the table with the rest of the people he had previously been sitting with. An aggressive Goliath with an axe strapped to his back, Xylovar, his red-gray skin looking intimidating in the firelight, and a half-elf, Dr. Rooks, his face covered by a plague doctor's mask, absorbed in a book. The group of misfits would sit and talk through the night, getting to know each other. Cass eventually shifting into the form of a younger human woman, light red hair and freckles prominent. They didn't seem to care much for each other at first, but frankly, there was no other space for any of them to go. The morning rolled around, and the town was ripe with chaos. The mayor's 2-year-old daughter had been kidnapped, supposedly by bullywugs? A strange, frog-like, humanoid hybrid race with a stench that would make a skunk jealous, that were attracted to sparkly items. This ragtag, barely a group, decided that they would take a look into the missing child. After a little investigation and assistance from the missing toddler's older half-sister, who was experienced in traversing the swamp because she hides from her stepmother there, they're hot on the trail of the Bullywug clan. As she leads them through the swamp, the group begins to mesh and meld. They learn each other's strengths, some weaknesses, and even some quirks. They make their way to the encampment and begin to plan an infiltration. Cass attempts to impersonate a bullywug and distracts the whole camp, getting information on the missing toddler. However, they're found out, and a battle breaks out. The bullywug chiefess comes from her cave, revealing herself to be a green hag. Banished from her coven, she manipulated the frog people into doing her bidding while she began her own coven, by eating the child, so it was reborn as a green hag. A harrowing battle ensued, her deviously casting spells, but in the end, victory. The group safely returns the child to her home and receives a small reward from the mayor. They ask why the town guard had been pulled away and the city left unprotected from the bullywug attacks. The mayor tells them that he wasn't sure, but he directs them to a friend of his, the captain of the guard in the city, Alex. She asks them to investigate why the Lord of the Artis region, Lord Dougal Mace, in the city of Pignus, is pulling guards back, and also asks them to check in with her friend, Captain Kivera in Shepshead, who had been having issues with livestock going missing, and not enough manpower in his guard because of the withdrawal. Several of the members, Dr. Rooks and Xylovar, are hesitant to go, but with a little bit of convincing, they decide to join the rest in an attempt to help the town. The group with no name travels to Shepshead to get a little more information on the guards being pulled away, and to help them with their livestock problems. Little did they know that they would find themselves in the middle of the weirdest territory disputes, since the elves and the dwarves fought over who owned the bottom of the ocean, which, by the way, ended up being the Tritons, but that is a different story from the ages before the Great War. It is discovered that the town has a bit of a wolf problem, but it seems that these wolves could speak common. They also seemingly have intelligence and can use more human-like abilities, as well as some magic. Through a bit of diplomacy and quick thinking, the group helps the town and the wolves reach an agreement. The wolves are to stop stealing sheep from the town and attacking its people, and are to help protect the city. In return, the townspeople are to stop attacking the wolves and help them with their food needs, whatever that may be. They also uncover and believe that it was the death of Captain Kivera's brother, the city's recluse sorcerer, who went missing months ago, that gave these wolves their newfound speaking abilities, intelligence, and magic powers. It was weird, but the group feels as though they had done some good. Without any killing, they managed to bring harmony to these two separate groups and make that area of the world better. Captain Kivera directs them to Pignus, begging the group to bring their plead before Lord Dougal Mace. They have a friend named Zavon, who was part of the guards in the city of Pignus, and he would be able to give more information. And this is where the Lil Scalawags N Co were born. As the party makes their way to the capital of the artist's region, Pignus, they decide to take a small pit stop on the way. The green hag they had killed not long ago had a letter from their old coven. Apparently, it was in an area nearby, and some of the party wanted to stop by and take care of some potential issues. The group locates the house that the coven resides in and sets into motion yet another diabolical plan. Led by Cass, the group pretended to be bullywugs, while Cass pretended to be the other hag they killed. They were to trick the coven into turning on itself. And this time, their plan against a hag would be successful. They fool the old coven into a dispute, making the fight much simpler and easy. They finish off the first, then quickly turn on the second. There was a young girl, already reborn as a hag and no older than 15 left. The group was very split on their decision to save or kill the young hag, but several of the party hastily chose the latter in fear of her creating more, a decision that would weigh heavily on Cass's heart. From there, the Lil Scalawags venture finally to the capital of Pignus. Upon arrival in the city, all seems normal. The hustle, the bustle, it all was there. They track down Captain Kivera's and Captain Alex's friend, Zavon, a charming tiefling who is part of the guard, who shows them around the city and reveals some more information. Upon further inspection, the Scalawags discovered that someone was trying to assassinate the Lord of the Land. Apparently, there had been some attempts on his life via poison, as some sort of revenge or other nefarious purpose, caused the conceited Lord to pull back the guards to protect himself. Zavon helps him gain an audience with the Lord's son, Athos Mace, who disagrees with his father leaving the people in the artist region vulnerable. The Scalawags work with Athos to figure out what they could do to protect the kingdom better. He hoped that by exposing the atrocities of his father to the council, that his father would be removed from rule. Athos introduced the group to a fair young lady, Tia, who had been falsely imprisoned by the Lord in a mirror. For what reasons, they have no idea, as she could not remember much more than seeing the Lord's face as she was locked away. What they do know is that she needed help getting out and could set the kingdom right with her testimony. So the group was tasked with finding a few difficult-to-locate objects to aid in an ancient ritual to reduce the risk of a high-level spell using alchemy to free her. They needed the heart of a dragon, the hair of a changeling in its true form, as well as a hag's eye. Weirdly enough, young Elman Tea Leaf had already found the hag's eye when they defeated the Coven of Hags, which was one down, but concerned about Tia's and Athos's intentions, he keeps it a secret. The first thing the group decided to go after was the heart of a dragon. They wanted to get the most difficult task over with, as well as help the artist region by ridding it of a cunning green dragon. The group ventures on to the cliffs near the city where this dragon resides. The cave entrance they needed was located on the side of the cliff a few hundred feet above the ocean. This fall would surely be deadly if any of them biffed it. The group managed their way into the cave without dying from a great fall, and they began hunting the dragon. Or the dragon begins hunting for them. It's hard to tell based on the taunts and cruel things that the dragon said after announcing her presence. Eventually, they made their way to the treasure room. Gold, items, and anything else you could imagine could be seen. It was beautiful. It was gaudy. It was clearly a dragon's hoard. The group looked around a little, whilst the dragon lurked, waiting for the perfect chance to strike. Making quick work of the rogue, separating Cass from the group, the dragon was looking too tough for the group to defeat. Some thought of escaping, others thought of continuing the fight. The paladin took a little bit of a nap. This was a battle for the ages. Through the careful use of a magical bead of force, the group put a barrier between them and the dragon and prepared an all-out onslaught to take the beast down. The barrier fell. The group unleashed all their force on the dragon. Blades flew, spells were cast, and arrows flying as the dragon was finally eliminated. Cutting out the dragon's heart was a difficult task in and of itself. There was tough scales, bones, and acid glands to weed their way through, but eventually the task was complete. They returned to the city of Pignus, only one item short of finishing their quest, if Elman ever reveals that he has the Hag's Eye. He wasn't all too trusting of the Lord and the Lady in the Mirror. The group only needs to find the changeling in its true form and retrieve a strand of their hair. Luckily for them, the Lord's son had a diviner working on it, Jack, and his partner Brianna from the Charcepta Archives, which was Sakuna, the goddess of knowledge's libraries. There was a changeling within Pignus that they could easily visit and get the hair from. After just a little bit of talking to them, seeing that they were Jack and Brianna's best friend, they seemingly easily convinced the changeling to give them a bit of their hair. However, as the group explores Pignus, buying items and stocking up with the spoils from the dragon's hoard, disaster struck within the group. Xylovar, equipped with an axe from the dragon's hoard, was challenged to a friendly bar brawl with Snud, but this axe, cursed by the dragon herself, caused a fury to take over Xylovar, and for him to lose sense of himself. Out for blood, Xy killed Snud. Luckily, Dr. Rooks was able to successfully revive Snud, remove the curse from Xy, and calm down the enraged group. Xy spent the night in prison, but due to Zavon's influence in the guard and proof of a curse and an agreement of no more violence within the city, Xylovar was released. However, Snud's death and Xy's apathy towards it would weigh on the group for several months. Now, back to the items. Elman told Dr. Rooks, finally, that he had the eye they seeked, but that he wasn't too sure about giving it up. Something felt off to him. He seemed to think that some greater, more mysterious things were going on behind the scenes. It was decided that the group would investigate further before giving all the items over for the ritual to release Tia from the mirror. Cass and Elman snuck into the wing of the castle where her mirror was held and impersonated Athos, the Lord's son. It was known that Athos had a deep emotional connection with her and that they wanted to be married once she was released. So, they thought it would be best to impersonate him and try and uncover a few more secrets. Cass took the form of Athos and had a short conversation with Tia. In this conversation, she did reveal that she had convinced Athos to attempt to poison his father and take control of the region, and this didn't sit right with Elman and Cass. They began doubting the plans even more and more. Unfortunately, not much else could be uncovered, but it did seem like there was more. The group decided to move on with the ritual and release Tia from the mirror. The Scalawags and Athos proceeded down to the mirror where the ritual would take place. Everything seemed okay, until it got a little ominous. At the end of the ritual, Tia reached from the mirror, stating that this is the last ingredient, ripped out Athos' tongue and threw it in the pot, releasing herself from the mirror. Athos was unaware that this was a portion of the ritual as he retched in pain, screaming. Tia, newly released, begged and begged the Scalawags not to turn on her, but Elman was not buying it. Unfortunately, Cass did buy it. They fell for a spell that manipulated their emotions. They defended the girls, the rest of the party turned on her, but they all eventually uncovered the truth, that this was no girl, but Rakshasa. The Rakshasa was cornered and desperate. It used a spell to plane shift Avalan, banishing her to who knows where, as the rest of the group finished it off to send it back to its home. Brianna and Jack, the archivists, raced down to help them and confer with their goddess, revealing that this may be a bigger plan of the primordials. The archivists go to check on something in the library, and the Scalawags rush the Lord's son to a healer so that they can reattach his tongue and make sure he lives. The day was eventful, but not over. The group then went to the library to meet the archivists and their changeling friend, only to hear a noise coming from the back room. Running in, they find a crazy sight, a gunky-looking blob with tentacles lashing out at Bree. Jumping into action, the Scalawags help her hold it off until Jack can get something to lock it away, turning it back to a small grimoire. Brianna reveals that this was a partial essence of a powerful primordial, Sadie Tia, that seemingly corrupted in the primary archivist's absence. After the grimoire was defeated, it became clear that these archives were much more than a library. They were made to keep the primordials at bay, hold them locked in a different plane away from the material plane, so that people can be safe, and the gods of the new pantheon can reign. This was not the Scalawags' business, but they gained some favor with the members of the archives for their deeds. Mourning the loss of their companion, Avalan, Rooks took their journal that she often wrote in, that was connected to her friend who was trapped in some sort of demiplane. This lesser primordial, named Arwinia, had been sponsoring and protecting Avalan, giving her powers, but she felt a cutoff when Avalan disappeared from this plane. Arwinia revealed that Avalan was exploring the world for her and trying to help her find a way to be free, so that she could see the world for herself. The following day, they were contacted by someone from Elman's past. She was calling on them to help with a mission for Elman's and Cass's organization, the Mask. Velia, a beautiful red-haired girl, asked for their assistance in freeing the elven city of Brightstone. This was a tricky task for both Elman and Rooks for a variety of reasons. Elman's mother's life was at stake. She, another member of the Mask, had been captured on a mission and imprisoned in the city. For Rooks, his father was the Archbishop of the Church of Cirrus, the main religion in the kingdom, and the one who had been corrupting the whole kingdom. The group took on the task. For Rooks, vengeance drove him. For Elman, a love for his mother. And for the others, it was various reasons, whether it be a sense of duty or love or money, only they could say. Their first task was retrieving the Staff of Ebony, an ancient artifact of the gods, from an ancient dwarven ruin. They were to make their way to the Sandbar Oasis in the desert and research where the staff may reside. The group set off traveling through the desert. It was a long journey. Not many bumps on the road, but the roads were fairly well traveled and not a great place for monsters. The biggest issues were the bandits, or maybe the mummies and the Medusa they stumbled across in an ancient tomb, but those were easily dispersed now that the group had grown together and meshed. A small side trip to the forgotten temples of Ebony and Kitsune gave both Rooks and Stud, respectively, a moment to connect with their goddesses. Upon arrival to the Sandbar Oasis, the group took a couple days off. They needed to research the ruins, discover the location of the staff, and stock up on supplies. Rooks was the head of research, seeing as he was the best at it. The rest of the group looked around the town for anything interesting and useful that may be of help. After a quick shopping spree and a few nights to relax, the adventure ramped back up. They found their way through the nearby hills, taking down giants with ease as they went, as they made it to the ruins that Rooks had determined would hold the staff. Now, it wouldn't truly be a dwarven ruin if you didn't have to solve a quick puzzle to gain entrance. The group rode down on some sort of contraption from ancient times before the Great War. The entrance to the ruins was dark, damp, and unwelcoming, much like an Edgar Allan Poe story. The group began weeding their way through nonetheless, fighting off mechanisms and ancient dwarven technology, as well as some weird corrupted sludge that plagued them the whole way, come to find out was known as chaos energy. The ruins were dangerous and not for the faint of heart. They needed to focus and make sure that they made it out alive. As they delve deeper, they come across some sort of temple, covered in this chaos energy, yet with a radiance outside of it. The brave and powerful Snud approached this radiance, a sword, seeming to be the epicenter of it. Snud picked up the sword and became able to communicate with it, the legendary blade, Dawnbringer. Snud was accepted by the sentient weapon, and so he began bearing it against all his foes. The group was almost at the keep of the city, where the Staff of Ebony presumably resided. The group reaches the keep with minimal issues, aside from the mechanism swallowing them or fireballing them to oblivion. It was a pretty easy journey. You would think that an ancient city like this would run out of surprises eventually, but somehow they kept coming to our adventuring friends. When opening the door to an abandoned keep, one does not expect to be blasted in the face by a mechanical dragon's breath. But that is the unfortunate situation that the Scalawags find themselves in today. The dragon released an unruly breath of chaos energy that singed the hairs off Snud's eyebrows. Before the fight even began, it was not looking good for any of them. Luckily, they had one of the most efficient and genius healers of their time with them. Rooks worked quickly to get everyone back into fighting form, and then the battle was truly off. Xylovar and Snud wailed on the dragon's gears and armor up close, while Cass snuck around and dismantled its chaos breath in its neck. Elman stayed back, pelting the beast from afar and peppering it with spells. All the while, Rooks did his damnedest to keep everyone alive and kicking. The dragon retaliated with all its force and knocked the party down, but eventually the group was able to take it out and get all those who had fallen back on their feet. The battle was tiring, but the Scalawags were victorious. They made their way inside and through careful inspection located the staff in a hidden chamber. Rooks wielded the staff and became even more connected to his goddess, which made him more powerful and confident. He was ready to take on his father in Brightstone. The group trekked out of the ruins. No backdoor exits here. This isn't Skyrim, you nerds. They had carved a safe enough path out and found their way. The group was ready to get on the road, especially Elman. It had been years since he had seen his mother, who was lost, and he was ready. They took a pit stop back in the Sandbar Oasis, and after a small delay of a harrowing fight with the Dragon Alley, who seemed to be in charge of the Sandbar Oasis, against one of the giant mechanisms from pre-Great War, they finally began the long journey west to Brightstone. Upon arrival in the kingdom of Brightstone, Rooks could feel a well of emotion building up inside of him. After discovering that his daughter was truly alive and corrupted by his father, he almost blew their cover with some guards, but the group was able to calm him back down and get him back on track for the mission at hand. He revealed that the Archbishop, his father, had murdered his husband in front of him and had threatened to do the same with his daughter. But the first step was to get into the city of Brightstone and find Velia. She had been in the town, gathering information and preparing for the overthrowing of a kingdom. She was a master spy and infiltrator, but there was an evil that had taken over the town and absolutely no help from the Mask. This would be no ordinary overthrow of a government by any means. She had discovered, however, that the Archbishop had 3 high-ranking generals, and these would be their first targets, and then the Archbishop's forces would be weakened enough for the adventurers to take down Archbishop Frederick himself. The first of the generals, a paladin named Cadogan. He was the leader of the Paladins of the Sun and captain of the guard. This was a powerful man, corrupted with dark magic running through his body. The group would have to handle him very carefully. But upon completion of this task, it would scatter the ranks of the Paladins and the guards, so they would be no longer of use to the Archbishop. The group stalked in the night to the captain's home. Stealthily, they slinked into his chambers where he laid, unarmored and asleep. They made quick work of him in his sleep. He awoke and gave them a slight run for their money, but in the end they were able to dispatch him silently and move on to phase 2 of their plan. Elman impersonated the captain and called a meeting with the lieutenants of the Paladins. They were all to meet in the meeting hall, but only Elman knew that the rest of the party would be lying in wait to ambush the Paladins. After luring them into a trap out of the public eye, they quickly took the warriors out. They staged them in the center of the meeting hall as a calling card that change was coming. The group retreated to their hideout, where they would begin to plan for the next general. That night, Velia wanted to speak with Elman alone. The two had been best friends basically since birth, so they had a special connection. She wanted to help him find his mother, and she asked him to stay with her for a while because she was feeling a little nervous about something. She revealed some secretive information that connected her deeper to the city than either of them had first realized. If you could have seen Elman's face while they spoke, you would have known that he was utterly shook. The next day began in the town with a storm. The Paladin leaders were all found dead, and the rest withdrew to help defend the castle. The group began to prepare for the second general under the bishop, the Archmage Metis. She was held up at the top of her wizard tower in the middle of town, leader of the wizards and the diviners of the sun. The group would have to fight through hordes of mages, traps, and who knows what else just to get to her. Then, after that, they would have to deal with the most powerful mage in the city. This was the fight that scared them the most. They would have to be careful not to misstep too greatly, or it would be their undoing. Luckily, Velia had a contact that could get them inside. They made their way through the first floor. Fireballs and ice spells pelted the group. They managed to dispatch the first set of warriors, but it took a toll on them. They were going to need to be more careful moving forward. They took just a little time to heal up and made their way to the second floor of the 3-story tower. There, they were greeted by spheres of whirling energy and lightning. They were shocked and took a heavy beating. The melee combatants of the group managed to get in close and finish off the remaining wizards on this level. By all counts, only the Archmage remained above. They had made it this far, but they were beaten and battered. They trudged up the stairs to the Master's chamber, where they found nothing. An empty room full of books and magic items, but no person. Something seemed off. Rooks used his powers to sense magic in the area, but the only thing he noticed was a faint red bead in one of his companion's shirt pockets. Just as he noticed it, the bead exploded in a blast, fire surrounding them, burning and singeing their skin. The door on the other end of the room opened and shut. Seemingly no one had gone through it. Or maybe someone invisible? The group ran across and opened the door. It led to a staircase going up to the roof. They made their way up cautiously. Once on the roof, the Archmage showed herself. She was ready to battle with them. Fire rained from the sky. The Archmage used every spell in her arsenal to take down the group. The fighters got in close and began to batter her around, but they could only do so much. The two rogues of the party positioned well and took down the mage with well-timed precision strikes. The fight was won. Elman and Zai lay on the ground unconscious. They healed up with the help of rooks and some potions and snuck their way out of the tower. 2 of the 3 generals now dead. The group would rest for the night. All that remained was the general of the clerics, Father Martin. Cass and Velia used the night to gather information and scope out a secret entrance, but things went awry for Velia. When she didn't return after the designated hour, Elman, concerned, along with several of the party, struck out. They found her fighting some of the clerics, and Elman noticed that she was slightly shaken. Retreating to the house, she revealed to Rooks that she knew where his daughter was, Blanca, and her caretaker, Edna, who was Rooks's best friend, and that Blanca had thought that Rooks had betrayed her and deserted her years ago. Rooks, heartbroken, goes to sleep, the rest of them taking the evening to prepare. The next morning, Rooks, in desperation and thinking he would die, called on his goddess's Ebony's aid. Not wanting his dear friend, Arwinia, to not have access to the world, he hoped to free her from the journal. While Ebony's power could pull her out as an avatar in the time being, she could not fully free Arwinia, for it was not a power she possessed. Arwinia, a powerful lesser primordial, though limited in her avatar form, opted to join them as she could, wanting to experience the world with those that she cared about. Our little scallywags take off for the church, using a secret back door. A touching family reunion ensued, as Rooks was finally reunited with his daughter, who had been trained by the Archbishop, her grandfather, as the next Archbishop. Things were cleared up. Blanca and Edna were easily convinced to help, and angered by the way that her grandfather treats the people, and excited to serve the true lost queen. Who was Velia? Blanca blurted out, which came as a surprise to all but Elman. The whole group, now shook by the revelation, turned to face her. Was she truly the queen's lost granddaughter and rightful heir? Recovered from the emotional moments and surprising news, they go on to take care of any clerics they could find and finish off Father Martin. They make their way to the first room of clerics, 4 sitting around the table, shooting the shit as they say. The group took them by surprise and quickly finished them off. They made their way to the main sanctuary, the room covered in a semi-opaque, black-colored mist. It was ominous. Cass was the first in, and she flew to the opposite side of the room. Seemingly, the mist had no effect on her. The others slowly entered, but unfortunately, some were louder than they had meant to be. Father Martin heard them and came to see what the commotion was. It was apparent, after the sneaky Cass stabbed him in the back, that these intruders were the ones assassinating all the generals. A battle took place across the church. Banisters were bashed. Church steeples were smashed. The group slowly whittled away the general's life, although it was difficult with the other clerics healing him constantly. Nonetheless, eventually, victory. Were their plans getting better, or was this fight just much less difficult than the Mage's Tower? Maybe being forced in these difficult fights had made them grow closer and strangely together. The group gathered to discuss what their next plan of action would be. It was agreed upon that the time to strike the Archbishop was now. They didn't want to give him a chance to learn of Father Martin's death and fortify his throne room anymore. They took off to the castle. A secret entrance known by Edna and Blanca would be their way in. The group snuck into the castle, escorted by Edna and Cass, disguised as Blanca. Blanca was sent to wait at the hideout as Rooks didn't want his precious daughter's life in harm's way. They made their way quickly and unnoticed to the throne room. It helped having a stand-in Blanca. She was looked upon highly as the bishop's granddaughter, and no one really messed with her. The fake Blanca and Rooks would enter the throne room alone. The rest of the group would wait by the back door at a secret passageway that Edna knew of for the time to strike. Rooks and Cass entered the chamber. Cass entering under the ruse that Blanca had led Rooks there to be captured. She wanted the bishop to think that she was completely loyal to him and had no love for her father. The bishop seemingly fell for Cass's plan. Rook stood in front of the man who had killed his husband with rage in his heart, but on the surface he looked calm and focused. This family reunion would be much less touching than the one that he had just had with his daughter. After a little talking back and forth, and taunting from Rooks's father, and angry slurs from Rooks, the bishop seemed to grow tired of the fake Blanca trying to stab him in the back. At the snap of his fingers, two grotesque monstrosities, made of bone and sinew, entered the room and tossed the real Blanca, shaken, and a dead Edna, to the floor. Blanca sat there speechless, with a blank stare in her eyes. The archbishop walked over to her, and with a quick incantation, cast a spell on her, as her body fell limp to the floor. The color drained from her face, as the rage inside of Rooks spilt out from his body. What came next was a cacophony of spells, blades, shields, and the screaming from both sides of the battlefield. The rest of the group broke out from the secret passageway and made their first moves. Elman teleported the limp Blanca to a safe place, so she wouldn't be harmed in the middle of the fight. Snud rushed forward to strike at the monstrosities with his mighty sword Dawnbringer. Xylovar threw his axe at the bishop to knock him down. Velia and Cass found their shots to cause as much pain to the bishop as they could, and Rooks unleashed the hell he had lived in for the past years on his father. The monstrosities took their move and struck hard, viciously raking their claws into the party's armor. The bishop also struck back with his might as the party was beaten back, seemingly overwhelmed by the strength of the bishop and these bone claws. Elman quickly banished the bone claws to another realm. This way the entirety of the group could focus their efforts on the archbishop. They surrounded him and struck together, Rooks casting spells, Elman keeping the bishop from casting spells. The group worked together in perfect harmony. The fight was not easy, though. The archbishop swung hard with his blade, striking fear into some of the bravest of the party members. But once again, the Scalawags were able to strike their foe down. An ominous black shadow emerged from Frederick and disappeared. Words were exchanged between Rooks and his father. What was said only Rooks could tell you, but it seemed to have given him some closure. Everyone rushed to check on Blanca. Was she truly dead? Rooks attempted to revive her out of desperation, but it did not work. After some quick deduction, Rooks figured that a spell had been cast to make her appear dead. He dispelled it, and lo and behold, his daughter was back. The rest took off to help Elman retrieve his mother. The theory was that she was being held in the castle's dungeons, as this is where the bishop kept his most troublesome of criminals that he had captured. With some impersonation and scare tactics, the group made their way to the dungeon unharmed. They looked through each and every cell. All were empty, except the last one on the left. Suspended from the ceiling, his mom hung, unconscious, wounded, and desperate looking. He released her and caught her as she fell, and as he grabbed her, she awoke and noticed who it was. Another touching family reunion ensued, Elman finding his lost mother, who he had been looking for years. The group, now with Elman's mother, made their way back to Rooks and his daughter in the throne room. Once back together, they asked, "What's next?" Blanca, eternally loyal to her kingdom, wanted to restore the true, uncorrupted queen to the throne. Velia responded, saying that the first thing they were to do was to find the real queen and make sure she is safe, and then they could go on from there. They went to the queen's chamber in search of her, but tragically, she lay dead behind the door, with a suicide note on her desk. The queen mentioned that she had been under the bishop's control, and that she wrote this note when he had a lapse in power over her, and ended her own life so that he would not be able to take control again. She mentioned having someone find her long-lost granddaughter, so that she could return the kingdom to its rightful ruler. At least, her dying wish would be possible. The group talked a little more, and it was decided that tomorrow morning, at the dawn of the Sun's Festival, they would announce the return of the Queen's granddaughter and the freeing of the city from the tyrannical rule from the Archbishop. They would explain all that had happened and attempt to win the favor for Velia from the people of Brightstone. For the night, the group would rest. It had been a hard-fought week. In the morning, the group met at the castle. The whole city would gather soon for the festival, and they needed to be ready. Dr. Rooks resurrected his best friend Edna, and took some time to speak with his dead father through Ebony's magic. Deciding to let his father's spirit rest, the group reconvened to make an announcement to the city, but they were missing someone. A guard handed a note to Rooks, It was from the missing Cass. Cass told Rooks that they were leaving, at least for a while, if not forever. They had to do a lot of soul searching, and they wanted to better themselves. Who knows what has happened to Cass since then, but maybe they will make an appearance in our hero's life someday again. The group waited on the balcony for the townspeople to gather outside. Rooks took center stage, reintroducing himself and telling his story, how he saw the corruption in his father. Blanca stepped up next, nervous. She backed Velia's testimony and introduced her, swearing loyalty to her as the new queen apparent. The city looked fondly on Blanca, giving them hope. Velia then stepped up to speak, Elman pausing her to give her inspiration with a kiss. She introduced herself, the queen's granddaughter, to her people. She told the tale of what she and the others had done, that they had expunged the rot from the root of the tree, and that the town may once again flourish like it used to. Music would return, people would be free, and no one would have to live in terror. She spoke beautifully, eloquently, like she always had. A roar erupted from the crowd, and the festival began with a joyous bang. People would be happy to see the return of the Archbishop's prodigal son, the freedom of the kingdom, and a new era under the new queen. And that is where the Scalawag story pauses for now, as repairing a kingdom, reuniting with long-lost family members, or trapezing across the world yourself takes some time. Check out the continuation of our campaign, Wanderer's Path, picking up after this with episode 28 on YouTube, or visit us for current sessions on Twitch at twitch.tv/destined-to-roll. You can also check out our other campaign, Patolis, with a cast of new characters DM'd by the amazing Candle. Thank you all for listening, and as always, good night, everybody!